Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod.
And I'm Nancy Alspaugh Jackson, and we were just watching a piece about Carly's voice, Arthur Fleischman, who's going to be joining us later.
Yes.
Carly's dad.
Yep.
And for those
Carly's
of you
voice.
that were watching that segment, we are very excited to talk to Arthur about his journey with his daughter. And, I'm going to be learning about it because we just got this book in. I met Arthur at the Autism Speaks walk, and just an incredible journey he's had with his daughter.
And it's a beautiful book. I read an excerpt from it earlier. Absolutely amazing, and I think very hopeful to a lot of parents.
Yes.
And in Carly's own words, talking about finding your voice and how we can help all of our children to find their voice.
Yeah.
That it's going to be different for different kids. And
it is. And, I love to hear from parents about their individual journeys because, I think so many times we think we're alone. And when you hear a story like this, it's like I said to Shannon just a minute ago, wow, and we think our road is tough.
Yeah.
You have so many different, each person's journey is individual, and that's not to minimize. You may have a child with Asperger's, you may have a child with high-functioning autism. It doesn't mean it's any less difficult than having a nonverbal child with severe autism. We all have our crosses to bear, so to speak. But by hearing these different stories from different levels, of parents who have different levels of children on this spectrum, I think we all share that hope, that desire to help our children be the best they can be.
Yeah, reach their fullest potential. And I think it reminds us to be grateful for some of the things that we have.
That we do have. Gratitude is so important.
Absolutely.
And to realize, it can always be worse. And we do have a lot of resources. And if you're watching us, we're a resource for you, right, Shannon?
That's right, absolutely. We're here to provide information and track down answers.
Yeah. So what's in the news?
Well, this really caught my attention that there's a new study that was done about using preschool teachers and early education teachers as a means of screening some of our more underserved populations.
Okay.
That one of the things that they found in the study is that there are certain things that are warning signs of autism that maybe we're trying to get the information out about that, but in some cultures, if a child doesn't make eye contact, it's seen as a lack of respect. That it's not just a child who isn't able. So in some cultures, if a child's doing that, the parent is going to be frustrated and unhappy and feel like the child's not respecting them. Whereas in other cultures, people are going to recognize and say, this is a problem, I need to get my child to a doctor.
Okay.
So what they were experimenting with is asking, preparing and training teachers of very young school-age children, whether it's preschool or kindergarten, to be able to appropriately see the warning signs and to be able to fill out an MCAT survey and accurately identify children who needed a further diagnosis. They had preschool teachers do it and they had parents do it, and they saw that overwhelmingly parents were not a good judge of whether the child needed more to be done.
Interesting, because I think a lot of times it's a function of denial.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's an emotional thing for parents and the parents, but at the end of the day, the parents weren't the good judge, but they found that overwhelmingly, if they gave the right information to the preschool teachers and the early education teachers, that they were a very good judge of identifying who in the classroom needed further evaluation.
It's interesting too, because they've got the markers of the other children to judge by.
Yeah.
So that's really important. I know for me, I was a first-time mom at the age of 46. Hello. I didn't really know anything about babies and toddlers. I had not been around that many of them. And I didn't know what was appropriate. Wyatt met all of his developmental markers up until about the age of a year and a half, too. And, probably about a year and a half, we started to see decline. But I didn't know. I thought, this must be the terrible twos.
Right.
And you really don't go to your pediatrician that often. You go in for 15 minutes.
Right.
And actually, at his preschool, which he started going to, like Mommy and Me at 2, nobody picked up on it. They said, well, he might have some behavioral issues. We did get a shadow to go with him, but nobody used the A word, I guess by law.
Right.
And that was a real disservice to us, because if somebody had only said, get an evaluation when he was 2, as opposed to telling me that when he was 3.
Yeah. Absolutely, the time lost. It's the thing that I think we all carry around the rock in our stomach.
Right.
And I think, what's interesting about this is that for years we've all said, why aren't the pediatricians being more proactive? Why aren't they? But for whatever reason, it doesn't improve. And maybe this is a solution to it. Because
to have teachers be more involved.
Yes.
And if you can't say, you don't have to say, I think your child has autism. Those are very, very difficult words. But you can say, I think your child needs an assessment.
Right, absolutely. And they're saying that in this case, it's not that the teacher absolutely diagnosing, but earmarking that this child needs further assessment done that can be put to the parents. I just think it's interesting, because when the parents go to the pediatrician is asking, so does your child do this? Does your child do that? They don't put your child through a battery of tests. And if the parents say yes, 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 then the pediatrician is going to say there's no problem. Whereas in the case of preschool and early education, they're going to be judging for themselves if the child does that. So I think that it's exciting, and I'm hoping that what it does is it allows for these teachers to be educated, and I think that's a really great thing.
Right.
If we could move towards that. So I'm very excited about that. And then, of course, we had a new study that shows something that I think we're all pretty aware of, but really calls to attention, that there is some healthcare disparities with our children on the autism spectrum. That our kids are more likely to need more services, and yet what they're finding is that quite the contrary is happening. That they're not having as much access to specialized services, that they're not being looked at as a whole child and getting all the things that they need. Something for us to be aware of when we're talking to our pediatricians, when we're accessing medical care for our children, that they need more, and instead they're actually getting less. So I don't know about you, but when we had to go through several different pediatricians because I was changing jobs and a lot of stuff was changing, and I found myself kind of repeatedly having to say to newer pediatricians, okay, I've told you this child has an autism diagnosis, but I need for you to see this kid, and don't not do something because you're poo-pooing it and thinking, oh, that's in the autism column. We're not sticking anything in the autism column.
Right.
Look at my child, and if he walked in here without that diagnosis, what would you be doing?
Right. What medical issues are there? And we know that that children with ASD are at risk for some conditions like seizures,
absolutely,
sleep disturbances, gastrointestinal problems,
absolutely,
asthma. So these kinds of medical conditions need treatment in and of themselves. And they can't just be, well, that's part of the autism, let them deal with that.
If you've got a child who's pushing on their stomach and rocking and constantly leaning over something to push on their stomach, we see a lot of times pediatricians saying, oh, well, that's just the autism. Quite the contrary. Time to consider taking your child to see a GI doctor, and there are lots of different things that are along those kinds of lines, where doctors, pediatricians will say, oh, well, that's the autism. Be a strong advocate for your child, and don't let that happen to your child. Force them to see your child as a whole, or get a new doctor.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Okay. So just some of the interesting stories that are out there, but I'm really excited that we're going to have an opportunity to talk to the author of Carly's Voice. Our Arthur Fleischman is going to be joining us via Skype. We're going to take a short break.
He's coming to us from Canada, I believe, from Toronto.
Yes, we're international today.
Yes,
Isn't that
we
exciting?
are.
So we're going to be talking to him. You also have the opportunity to participate in the conversation. Want to remind you that if you're watching us on autism-live.com right now, you can, the question box is active. You don't have to log in. There's not a cost. You can just type in your question, and we'll be happy to ask Mr. Fleischman your question. If you're watching us in a rebroadcast, you can email your questions in, and we'll still hunt down the answers for you. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by our special guest, Arthur Fleischman. Stick with us. We have a special guest right now.
Yes, we do. We have the author, the co-author, I should say, of Carly's Voice. Arthur Fleischman is joining us from Toronto, Canada. Is that right, Arthur?
That's correct. Hi.
Hi.
There he is.
How are you today? Good. We were just
soup here.
Oh, okay. We were just looking at the 2020 piece.
Yeah, yeah.
And quite an inspirational journey, I have to say, just in the beginning. But we're going to go back to the very beginning.
Yes, and so you have these 3 children. You had twin girls, and when did you first know that Carly was a little different?
I think we probably sensed it pretty much immediately. I mean, Carly didn't look a lot like her twin. You know, it's a little bit hard with newborns. They're so funny looking anyhow. You know, I love how parents always say how beautiful their baby is. They're not beautiful. You know, newborns are not beautiful. But we could tell within the first couple of months as Taryn developed that Carly was developing quite differently, and she almost immediately started missing milestones. She had, you know, a little bit more of a hazy look in her eyes. So I think we probably knew by month 3 or 4 something was amiss. Yeah.
And I gotta say, in the book you detail that when you had your first child, it wasn't a typical experience either, that your child had to have a pretty extensive surgery fairly early.
Yeah, we like drama in my family.
Yeah. And then you needed some help and support in having the successful pregnancy with the twins. And so I thought it was really interesting that you expressed in the book that you kind of felt like you were owed a really simple experience. That you were going to have the twins, and that it was, you know, you in your karma bank, that it was going to be all hearts and flowers and roses, and it didn't end up that way at all.
No, very arrogant of me, wasn't it?
No, I think I really related to that, quite honestly, thinking, well, you know, if things have been difficult, that maybe an easier time is going to come. But quite the contrary, you guys had a tough road.
Yeah, I think that. You know, I don't know if there's any karmic forces at play here, but yeah, you do sort of expect that if you get struck by lightning once, you won't get nailed again. But then again, maybe if you have a lot of ferrous in your blood, you keep getting hit by hit by lightning. And I think maybe there's just something about our DNA and chemistry that you know, that led to the challenges that you know, Tammy's had with her health, and then of course Carly and son had as a small child.
But at some point, you began to realize that there were things going on with Carly, that she was going to need some extra support. How long did it take you? How exhaustive was it in finding and getting a diagnosis?
The diagnosis part was not particularly hard. Particularly my wife, I would say, of the two of us, is much more, you know, a student of science. And when she saw something amiss with Carly, she very quickly went into research mode. It wasn't quite as easy then. I think Google maybe was around, I don't recall, but she certainly did a fair bit of research. And she's the one who came back and said, I'll bet you our kid has autism. And we connected with 2 developmental pediatricians and a psychologist. We actually got 3 independent diagnoses fairly quickly at age 2.
Okay.
And so that, you know, we knew right off the bat that your best bet is to get your child diagnosed quickly, because that's really the only way to access the services on one hand. And on the other hand, if you don't start young, you don't get the same impact. So getting the diagnosis was not hard, although what we were told is Carly wasn't a garden variety of autism. I think what we know today is there's no such thing as a garden variety of autism. But what we were told in those days 15 years ago, she didn't have garden variety of autism. And so we just kept looking for other conditions, whether it be Fragile X or something else going on, because we were told that she was severely cognitively delayed, that she had oral motor apraxia, so she wouldn't be able to speak. And so we figured maybe there was something in addition. In fact, now that I think about it, one of the developmental pediatricians said, we don't want you to be too focused on the autism because we think there's other stuff going on here, and we're afraid to miss it if you only focus on the autism.
Okay, so she was.
I thought about that.
Was she completely nonverbal then at 2?
Yeah, she. You know what? She had a few words between, I'd say, the ages of 2 and I'll say 6. You know, she could sort of approximate the word juice and, you know, mama and dada, but only with a lot of speech language therapy. It certainly wasn't coming naturally to her. It was clear right away that verbal communication was not going to be her primary means of communication.
And so did you get to a point where you thought, this is just how it's going to be and we're never going to be able to communicate with our child? Had you gotten to acceptance on that, or can anyone ever get to acceptance on that?
Well, I think, the first 7 or 8 years were the fix Carly years, as we called it, where we truly believed that there was some button we could press that would alleviate some of the challenges and suffering that we were witnessing. Though I think in our heart of hearts, Tammy and I certainly knew that she wouldn't speak. I think there were other people who hoped that they might, elicit speech from her. But she was starting to learn other communication techniques, working with Barb, her speech language pathologist. She was doing very well with PECS, not so well with sign language because she's got a motor planning issue. So the intricate sign, she even today does some very basic signs, but the more intricate signs she can't do. So we knew that she could communicate. It was cumbersome, the stacks of pictures and the PECS
right.
decks. And
she wasn't using computer-assisted technology at that time?
Not at that time. Not at I'd say ages, 4, 5, 6. I think we started to introduce Dynavox machines probably right around there.
Right.
But they were so cumbersome. They actually frustrated her more than anything. You'd press one picture and another word you'd press carrots and apple would pop up. Like they were just really, the technology was really.
Yeah, it's amazing how far we've come with technology just in the past couple of years, right? In terms of helping our nonverbal kids. What you mentioned, all the challenges and the struggles. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that, what it was like on a daily basis, what Carly's challenges were?
Yeah, they were so deeply fundamental. The speech was actually, in some ways, the easiest thing. The lack of speech was the easiest thing to deal with. I think the hardest thing to deal with, when you saw a little bit of that in the 2020 video, she never sat still. She never stopped moving, and when she was moving, she generally was doing some sort of foraging, jumping, banging, pulling, emptying of cupboards, emptying of closets, stripping off clothes, overflowing tubs. And I don't mean for an hour or two. I mean 20 hours a day. Like she slept maybe 3 or 4 hours a night. And if she wasn't sleeping, she was pretty much destroying.
How was that? What was that like for you and your wife? I can't even imagine the kind of stress you were under. Can you tell us about that?
I can't even imagine. Even when I reflect back, it's just such an incredible blur because we're so sleep deprived, and running a business and raising 2 other kids, and my wife had health issues, as you saw in the book. Through all that, we did make use. We're very fortunate. We could afford, through debt and good fortune, we could afford support in the house. So we definitely had support during the day. We would make ourselves, or we would make use of respite care. So we would have, the occasional weekend where we could sleep for a couple of days. Pretty quickly, I'd say by age, maybe 8 or 9. Well, not so quickly, I guess. By 8 or 9, we started taking vacations without Carly and leaving her with a nanny or a therapist or in respite, just so that we could go away with the other 2 and enjoy a bit of life. But no, it was really exhausting. I think you just give up a lot of the pleasures of life when you're faced with this, because even small things like having family over for dinner, there's no joy in it. It's just more work to do, right? More dishes,
right.
And more preparation. So you acknowledge you're not going to have the same life as your friends and your neighbors have, and you put your head down and you muscle through.
Right. But things did change for you, and Carly did have a huge breakthrough, and we're going to talk about that, but we're going to take a break, and in just a couple of minutes we're going to come back and talk more with Arthur Fleischman and tell you about Carly's big breakthrough, which led to Carly's voice. So stick with us.
We're back with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and we have been speaking with Arthur Fleischman, and we were just talking over the break, sharing our stories with him about our children, Jim and Wyatt. And and our journeys. And that's what we're doing here. We're really sharing our life journeys with our children, and in hopes that our stories will help you at home. And this is a really, truly remarkable story. Arthur Fleischman is sharing with us Carly's voice, his journey with his daughter Carly, who's the co-author of the book, who is nonverbal. And we were getting ready, Shannon, you were getting to the breakthrough.
Yes. So when she was 10, tell us what happened, the big breakthrough.
So, as I mentioned, we had abandoned the notion that family vacations were actually any good for anybody. And Tammy and I took the other two away to the Grand Canyon for spring break. And we were away, and we were driving down from the canyon rim back toward Flagstaff, and the phone rings. The cell phone rings, and it was Howie, and he's all sort of breathless and excited. And he said, Carly's been typing today. And I didn't really totally understand. I mean, we'd seen her typing on her, at that point, she did absolutely have it was either, I think it was a Dynavox or something. It was, one of those, it was a precursor to an iPad, basically. Right. So it had all those images on it, but it also had a keyboard on the screen. And as I understand from Carly and from Barb and Howie, she wasn't feeling well, and she didn't quite have the exact words to describe how she felt. So she typed, "Help, teeth hurt." And ultimately she threw up, and she was running a little bit of a fever, and she just, she was sick. And, I'm not sure we totally, I don't want to say we didn't believe, but I'm not sure we totally embraced the power of what we had just heard, because, 3,000 miles away, and we didn't see it ourselves, and it didn't quite compute because Carly was so, we knew that she had some measure of intelligence, and we knew that she could point to pictures and images. We even knew she could point to a couple of letters, like if you put, CAT and DOG, and you said point to dog, she could point to dog fairly reliably. But we never had any sense that she could spontaneously write words that she hadn't been taught. And that was really the opening of, I won't say it was a floodgate, because it was a trickle. For about a year, her writing was very, sporadic and fairly short and quite functional. But it opened up a whole new world for her, and certainly for us.
It's amazing, and offers so much hope for so many people who are out there whose children have not yet found their voice. But Carly is now someone who is very prolific, excuse me, and you were saying before we had you on that she's quite social networking savvy, and has the opportunity to talk to, for people to ask questions from time to time, and which is quite amazing. What is your experience of Carly now?
Well, it's been a very long, slow progression. I don't want anyone to think that there was some sort of, act of God or miracle here. She worked very hard to get to the point that she even knew what letters strung together meant. And as she talks about in her final chapter of the book, maybe we'll come back to that, but what she calls her inner voice, and the ability to process information and process sound and process words. But between the ages of, say, 10 and 13, she started to string together more than just simple requests, like, I want juice, or let's go for a walk, or, give me cookies, or whatever. And she started to show a sense of humor, and she started to show a remarkable awareness of pop culture and current events. And when it was time for her to have a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, her speech pathologist said, at 12 or 13, Jewish kids have a bar bat mitzvah. Usually they write something. We think you should write something, a speech or a letter or something. And so that was her first serious piece of writing. It was about a 10-minute speech, so it was about 6 pages long. And then she, with her pushing, we made our way to Ellen DeGeneres, who she wanted to have read the speech for her on video. And we successfully petitioned Ellen to read it, and she videoed it, and we played it at the event. It was really, that to me was sort of the watershed moment. It wasn't even just the writing. It was this moment where we got to see Carly express a point of view about autism and her family and the world around her, and a really important worldview, to a group of 250 people, and see their reaction to her, because everyone had previously looked at her as, this poor autistic girl who, may end up in a group home one day. she wrote this speech, which was very powerful and very, very moving. I mean, people were laughing and crying, and they just had this experience that, I can't believe your child actually has that much depth and ability to move people and motivate people. So that was really kind of the opening. And so that would be about age 13. And then it just kind of took off from there. I mean, there was a piece on 2020 about her. And social media was just taking off. A friend of ours built a little website, which we've since rebuilt. Facebook came about, Twitter came about. And because, excuse me, it was so important for Carly to express her point of view to people who would listen, social media was a natural way for this previously closed-in, silent individual to reach, not just her immediate family and friends, but quite literally now millions of people, right?
Yeah.
With 40,000 followers, and then their followers, or 36,000 Facebook followers. She reaches every day, 2 or 3 million people. It's
how
really
can our viewers connect with Carly on Facebook or Twitter or wherever?
Yeah, the best way to reach her is to follow her on her public profile on Facebook. It's Carly Fleischmann.
Okay.
Carly, and Fleischmann is F as in Frank, Leischmann.
Okay.
And she doesn't really use her private Facebook page, so people do try to friend her, but it's just too overwhelming.
Right.
Her public page, she posts and tweets and answers questions. On Twitter, she's Carly's Voice, at Carly's Voice.
Okay. And
her website, we can chat a bit about this. We built an interactive video which will allow people to experience the world of autism. I have an ad agency here in Toronto, and my partners partnered up with a production company, and we built a really incredible interactive video that allows people to experience through Carly's eyes what 90 seconds in a coffee shop would feel like. And if you go to you can go in either way. You either can go to carlysvoice.com, which is her website.
We had that up just now.
Okay. And so you probably saw a link there to the cafe, carlyscafe.com.
Okay.
It's the experiential site. So she's got lots of different ways for people to interact and, just learn that it's not a moneymaker. There's nothing e-commerce about it. It's just a chance for people to interact with Carly and with each other. That's, the days of forums seem to be over, but Facebook walls are a great place for people to exchange information.
That's great. What an amazing thing to do to allow people to experience that world. I really, we commend you for doing that.
Absolutely.
So Carly is how old now?
Carly's 17.
She's 17. How is she doing today, and what are your hopes for her, Arthur?
So, after a couple of years, education was really challenging because as she wrote more and more, we started to see that she was, did not have a very low IQ. In fact, she had a really solid IQ and certainly solid understanding. And it was really hard to find a place that we could educate her where her behaviors could be tolerated and yet her mind could be inspired. So she went back and forth from homeschooling to ABA schools, back to homeschooling. Public schools weren't working out so well. But by about 13, or 14, she was saying, I really want to be in a public school like my sister, like Taryn. And we said, but you can't sit long enough, and she wouldn't write all the time. She would only write sort of spontaneously and very, very slowly. So to make a long story short, she was in an ABA center school, applied behavior analysis centered school for kids with autism. She was really unhappy there by the third year in, and we found a high school in our neighborhood who was willing to do a little test and just take her in for 8 weeks at the end of the school year just to try a class and just to see if she could sit through it. And she more than sat through it. She actually participated. It was some sort of philosophy class where they were exploring dreams and the meaning of it. And it was a grade 10 gifted class, so they were all advanced students. And she nailed it. Like, she just did extremely well. So by the that experiment, the principal said, this is going to take a lot of hard work, but let's see if we can structure a year where she takes maybe 4 classes. And that took a lot of trial and error because she has no motor planning, really very low, fine motor planning in her hands. Things like mathematics is a little tricky because she can't hold a protractor or compass, anything like that. So we figured it out, and she now takes, she's back for her, just finished her second full year in a mainstream high school. She's taking all advanced academic classes in playwriting, English, philosophy, history. She's taking like home ec and that kind of thing too to fill it in, so not every class is academic.
Right.
As I understand it, she made honor roll this year, which means her average is, I think, a way. Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, this is certainly a lesson for everyone out there that is watching. Don't assume that a child, whatever their behaviors, whatever their symptoms, is not intelligent. Assume the opposite.
Yeah,
Assume intelligence. This is something we hear again and again.
Yeah.
And thank God for educators like the principal you found that said, this is going to be hard work, but we're going to do it. And that's what real educators do, right? They take on challenges and they see how to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to really, you've got to work hard. We are strong advocates, but Carly is an impossibly strong advocate. I mean, she wrote the petition letter to the principal when we sat down with her and said, let's strategize how to handle this meeting. She said, I got it under control. She did. She had this, she had this incredible letter written that by the time she played it, the principal just went, I can't argue with that. We have to find a way to make this work. So you really do have to advocate for yourself if your child isn't ready to participate in that advocacy. You have to reach deep down within, or find a friend, a family member who can, who won't take no for an answer.
Yeah,
absolutely. I have to go back to the book here for a second, because the book is phenomenal. It's really wonderful. And as you mentioned, Carly writes the last chapter in the book. What really tipped the scales and inspired you to get it written down and get the book done?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say it came down to a happenstance phone call. I got a call from a publisher, a guy I've never met, and just over 3 or 4 long phone conversations, I joke with my wife that I had a man crush on the guy because he was so smart and just had a really nice quality to him. So he said, I don't know that we'll buy your manuscript, but he was at Hyperion, which was part of Disney, which is part of ABC, so it was all in the same family. And after the 2020 piece aired, he said, I think you should try to explore that further, because my guess is that little 8-minute clip only tells a fraction of the story. And I said, yeah, for sure. So I talked to Carly, and at that point she was really, trying to express herself more and more. And we decided that a book was really the best way to have a long format platform for telling all aspects of Carly's story, and that people would realize there was no miracle here, because the news media captures it in 30 seconds or a minute, 3 minutes, and they make it look quite miraculous. And that's not fair to people, right? It's not fair to other families to think that, why have hope? Because that was just a freak accident that their kid was, so brilliant or whatever. So we wanted people to understand that our life was hell for 10 years. It's still not easy by any stretch of the imagination. Carly has very severe OCD. She types extraordinarily slowly. She has all sorts of sensory issues. It's going to be a lifelong battle. And we thought a book was a great place to really map the journey. And because we'd have time, we'd have a year to write it. Carly could write little segments of it. As it turns out, she wrote a whole chapter at the end, and then we also used a lot of her writings throughout the book. Maybe the only advantage to her being nonverbal is I've saved every conversation we have ever had.
Wow. That's great. So a lot of the book was written, or...
Well, you're making it sound easy.
No,
Sure
it took a year to write it.
It took a year to write the proposal, which had 5 chapters, written in it, and then another year to write the rest of it.
Wow.
But, so what I mean by that is I had to write the book, but lots of conversations and narrative that you would read in a memoir, often an author has to recreate in his head.
Yes.
I could go back, and the way we had done conversations is if they were on instant messaging, I would save them, so I would see both sides. Or if the conversation was side by side, where you might ask her a question and she would answer it, very often the person with her at the end of that conversation would quickly go back in and try to type in their side of the conversation. So in most cases, we had full back and forth conversations between Barb and Carly, Howard and Carly, Barb and Howard. Like, a lot of this was documented. So I could dig through years and years of conversations, like almost like a historian, and pull out the pieces that were relevant to the storytelling.
Awesome.
How can people get this book? What's the best way, Arthur, for them to
I
get
think
it?
the best and most economical way is online. It's for sale on all major e-retailers. There are links on carlysvoice.com to all of them, Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble and all the mass retailers. I think it's in Costco now. And so I think that's probably your most economical. It's also available in an audiobook for those who are unable to read.
Great.
Find that challenging. Yeah.
And I want to know, because I was able to read a little bit last night, some of the questions that people ask Carly. And one of the things that I found fascinating, because it's what I would want to ask, is what it was like for her and when she realized that that she had this voice. And I'm not sure I'm going to get the term right, but she says something about filtering.
Yeah, she calls it audio filter.
Audio filtering. And that she taught herself how to audio filter. I'm just wondering what you as a parent and what Carly recommends for parents who have children on the spectrum who are nonverbal. What do you guys suggest that they do to help their children to potentially audio filter themselves?
Yeah. So let's start with the definition, because it's actually not totally accurate, though. God forbid anyone should correct my daughter. She'll have nothing of that, of course. So, she calls it audio filtering. What she really means is she says that we take thousands of pictures per second with our eyes, and we hear, millions of bits of information with our ears, and even smells and physical sensation can interfere with information processing. And she uses this wonderful metaphor of being in a coffee shop at the end of the book, which is ultimately what we turned into the interactive video. And she just says, it's so hard for me to have a conversation if someone walks by with strong perfume, brushes against my arm with a rough wool coat, the whistle of the espresso maker, a good-looking barista walks by. All these things create such immense distraction that I can no longer hear the person speaking to me and understand it. So it's really sensory filtering, not just audio filtering. That being that, she talks about in the early days how sounds around her had no meaning in the beginning, and then bit by bit she could start to pick up, meaning. First, she says her sister was the first person she thinks she was able to audio filter and fully understand. And so I guess the way I see it is, probably her brain is full of static, lots of inputs, and that creates sort of static. And then in the old analog days when the televisions needed to be sort of, tuned, you used to have to turn a little knob until it comes into focus, or on your radio. I think that's kind of the way it worked with her, that, bit by bit, it started to get clearer. So the only way I can figure out what helped her is to go backward, and she'll give you some sense that she taught herself. I think the ABA helped a lot. She said it, she's like, I don't love ABA, but I do think it helped me organize my thinking.
Awesome.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So, I think there were probably a number of things that that contributed to her. We always spoke very clearly and slowly to her. We labeled everything. So anytime she saw a picture, she saw a word. I think there's probably a number of strategies that led to the success.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, your story is so inspirational.
It's an amazing story, and there's so many lessons to be learned about tenacity, as you said, no overnight miracles, and we hope the parents out there hear that. If there's one thing you could leave us with, Arthur, what would it be? One, a closing thought to parents out there who maybe have a child who's been diagnosed with severe autism and is a nonverbal. Do you have any advice you might want to give them, or words of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe where I'd leave you is sort of with two thoughts. One is you touched on it. One of you so rightly said, don't judge a book by its cover. You're going to get this diagnosis, and immediately you will assume the worst, because that's generally what gets played out in the press and so forth. Do prepare yourself for just an ungodly amount of work and effort, and it is absolutely worth it. Will you have the same outcomes that Carly has had? I don't know. I mean, Carly has had 40 to 60 hours of therapy a week since she was 3 years old. So, and she still continues to have it. So, that I think has been a major contributing factor, that she has so much intervention. But get your kid as much intervention as you possibly can. Speech, language, pathology. Don't ignore the communication side. And then the last thing I'd say, so obviously sign yourself up for as much effort and involvement as you can, and then don't blame yourself. Cut yourself some slack, because there's a lot of guilt And there's not a lot of time for that. Like, you don't really, it's wasteful, and it doesn't help anything. And if you need to leave your kid, in good care for some respite and go out for dinner, go out for a movie, or take a short vacation, or just take a walk, by yourself or with your partner, just do it. Like, there's no guilt in it, and your kid will be fine. Like, not every day has to be perfect for them, right? Like,
Okay.
All great advice.
Great advice. And please get the book.
Yes, get the book and visit carlysvoice.com so that you can learn more about this incredible family's journey. And thank you so much, Arthur, for being with us and for taking the time. It's really been wonderful.
It's been great
Thanks
speaking with you, and we wish you the best and your family, especially to Carly. And we will spread the word on your remarkable journey, and hopefully get more people to buy this book. It's so valuable. Thank you so much, Arthur.
Thank you.
thank you keep up the good work.
Thank you.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This
Yeah.
remarkable group of young kids, we'll talk about them. And I was at the Inclusion Films Camp
can't wait
yesterday
to hear about
in
that.
San Diego for military
Awesome.
children with autism. And
Can't wait to
I
hear
met some brilliant, talking about not assuming non-intelligence. These kids were brilliant. I loved being with them, and we'll talk about that.
Okay, so stick with us. Welcome back. We've got so much to talk about. I want to get right to it.
We do.
Speed Gamers.
The
pretty amazing.
Speed Gamers, we love this group
Yes,
of
we
young
do.
video gamers. They have been helping Act Today for a couple of years now. They have in the past raised over $115,000 for Autism Care
Pretty
and Treatment Today. Yeah, these are kids that play video games. So don't think that all kids that play video games are slackers, parents.
No way.
Because these kids are the most philanthropic, charity-minded group. They've raised more money for us than any group. We've had an individual give a donation that's very large who wants to be anonymous, but this is the largest group of, this is the biggest amount of money that any group has given us. They are at it again. They're doing a Pokemon marathon.
Right now.
Emily, can you show
There
what
it
they're
is.
doing? Look where they're at. Oh, Shannon.
Look at that. And so $33,772.77 right now, on the way to $50,000, which I hope they overshoot.
Oh, look at the hats they have on. Okay, let's see. I don't know who's gaming right there, but he's got something going on, like silly string on his head. And they do things. You can ask them to do amazing stunts, okay? And they will do them.
Yeah.
They'll put on a Pokemon suit and go out and do 300 push-ups. They will, I mean, the things these kids are doing are hilarious.
I've tuned in a couple of times since they started on Friday, and what I love is that they're absolutely shameless about raising the money. There was something that somebody
shameless.
asked them to do in the game, and they said, well, will you pay $5 for it?
Oh, yeah, they make people,
And the person
yeah.
said yes, and so
Yep.
they did it and got the $5 pledge. So
Right.
really exciting.
So
and how
go
much
to
do
the
we appreciate that?
website, donate, watch them, support them, like them on Facebook, tweet it,
Share
do whatever,
it.
share it. Their goal is 50,000. They're going till Friday night, and if I were a betting woman, I would say they're going to surpass the 50.
I think so too.
Yeah, we're
I
at
know we do.
Wednesday midday.
Yep.
Yeah, they're
gonna-
gonna
make it and
surpass
pass
it
it.
without a doubt. So Britt, who is the head of the Speed Gamers, your brother Chase, all the Speed Gamers over there, we love you.
Yes, we do.
You rock.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm very impressed with them.
Yeah. So we're gonna give a lot of grants out with that money.
Absolutely. It all goes for a good cause.
Okay.
Okay, so, and you were
I was
someplace
in
yesterday.
San Diego yesterday at
wanna
Cox
hear.
Communications. They are our partner, along with Joey Travolta with Inclusion Films, in a fabulous camp we're doing, the Inclusion Films workshop camp, summer camp for kids with autism in the military and their siblings. And I went down yesterday and spent most of the day with 40 plus kids taking this film camp. We started the day with an incredible warm-up dancing session. Then we broke up into groups, the older kids in a group, age levels, and Shannon, I was blown away by the creativity of these kids. I was telling you a little earlier about one young man in his late teens. He knew everything about the movie world, everything. Now, of course, he didn't make eye contact. He social skills, weren't necessarily what we expect. But let me tell you, this young man could tell me every Tim Burton film ever made. The Avengers, he was very, very opinionated about that.
Wonderful.
And when I asked him what he wanted to be, he said, "A famous director. I want to be a famous director."
And he will be.
Yes, and kids that wanted to be animators and actors, and kids that were just having fun. And I want to thank Cox Communications, our partners, and Joey Travolta just does an amazing job teaching these young people. He has such a passion for it.
Well, we had him here in the studio, and I'd never met him before. But my take on it, we sat here and talked with him for a while, and I said, "Boy, you're the real deal, aren't you?"
He is the real
and he
deal.
said, "Yes, I am the real deal." And,
He is
and I knew that he knew that he was.
the real deal. And I don't know if his brother, the famous actor John, is anything like him, but I can tell you, Joey Travolta is a genuinely incredible guy, the real deal.
The real deal. And I also want to remind everybody that this is something, the military family children.
Yes.
And their siblings.
And their siblings, and it's a 2-week camp down in San Diego. We hope to do it next year.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have to raise the money for the financing for it every year.
But these kids get to go
for free.
No cost.
At no cost. For 2 weeks, they get to learn how to make movies. They're going to make a movie, and it's going to be shown at the San Diego Film Festival and on Cox Communications.
And you're going to bring back some footage for us to show on
I am. We shot some footage yesterday. I don't think it was quite ready. We're going to dedicate some time to showing you that, and
very
it's
impressive.
just really fun.
It's, as we say, it's so wheat that they get to go for
It's so
free.
wheat.
It's
Yeah.
so wheat.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And congratulations to you on being a part of that. And
Thank
getting
you.
that
I'm
all
very
together.
proud. My staff, Laura Marquand and Caitlin Fullerton and Amy Zhang, worked particularly hard in putting this together. And also thanks to the people at Cox Communications.
And to Inclusion Films, Joey Travolta.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Well, a lot going on.
A lot.
With the Speed Gamers and with Inclusion Films. So I'm really looking forward to seeing. That's life-changing for those kids.
It's life-changing. Well, actually, Joey was telling us when he was here we talked about a young woman named Danny Bowman.
Yes.
And Danny Bowman is an animator. And she started at Inclusion Films, and now she teaches animation. She's actually going next week to work with the kids in San Diego. And then there's another young man who worked at Inclusion Films. He is now an editor that Joey hired full-time, who's going to be editing the documentary about the camp down in San Diego.
Amazing.
We also, our friend, the real deal, Joe Mantegna.
Yes.
The actor. Okay, Joe has a daughter. He has 2 daughters, Mia and Gia. And Mia is on the autism spectrum. She went to the Inclusion Films camp, and she is now working as a makeup artist. And she also did a piece that aired on CBS News on her dad when he got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So these are kids that are really working.
Yeah.
And the skills they are learning at this camp are skills they're going to use for a lifetime, their communication skills, their social skills that are helping them, we're developing, and they're learning really vocational skills.
Absolutely.
And there are some studios that Joey is working with that are going to be hiring some of our kids.
It's really amazing. We could talk about this all day, but we're at the end of our time.
Okay.
We have to take a minute to say that as this show ends, the conversation continues. There are lots of ways to get in touch with us to tell us what kinds of stories you want to hear more about, right, Nancy?
That's right.
Email is one of the great ways you can get a hold of us. Want to remind you that you can be watching us on Blip, you can be watching us on YouTube, you can download us on iTunes, and we're also available on Ustream. So lots of different ways to get a hold of us, lots of different ways to watch us.
Spread the word. We got to get more viewers, and we want to just spread the word so we can get information out there. Like the interview you saw today with Arthur Fleischman of Carly's Voice. I thought it was just incredible.
But we also take your questions. If you have questions about something that you want more information, or if you want to give us suggestions for the kinds of topics that you want to see covered, we're very interested in that. We really want your input, and we're not just paying lip service to that,
No, we're not. If you have information to share, we want to hear about it. So let us know. You know, you may end up as a guest here sitting with us or on Skype. Right?
Yeah, you can absolutely Skype in with us.
Yeah.
You don't even need an invitation to do that.
Right.
So I always enjoy this time with you. You are such a ball of fire. And I saw something on Facebook yesterday that reminded me of you and your new tattoo that it said,
Warrior.
It said, don't mess with me. I'm an autism mom and I'm a warrior.
That's right. We are. We're warriors together. So let's fight this battle together. Let's have fun.
Okay.
And as you always say,
until next time, give your kiddos a hug from us.
and as I always say, catch the joy as it flies. It's fleeting. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.